His colorful, vibrant paintings catch everyone's attention, but they are not simply decorative. The meaning behind a painting has the power to impact a life more than a heated speech. And Van Gogh, intuitively, did this with mastery. The harvest can only come after the sowing. That is one of the only certainties we have about life. Picture a solitary figure seen from behind, crossing a freshly plowed field, scattering seeds he may never see germinate. Why did this scene, and not another, return so many times to his brush? What was he, in fact, trying to plant? We are talking about The Sower, painted by Vincent van Gogh in 1888, during the period he lived in Arles in the south of France. Today, its different versions are scattered across museums like the Kröller-Müller in the Netherlands and private collections around the world. Van Gogh was 35 years old. He had moved south in search of light, of color, of a place where he could found, according to his own dreams, a kind of artist's community. It was one of the most intense and most painful periods of his short life. And it was also the period in which he painted, again and again, this figure, the sower. Look closely at these canvases. In one of them, the entire sky is taken over by a giant yellow sun, almost exploding into green and golden rays over a wheat field. The ground, by contrast, is painted in vibrant blues and violets, a bold choice because soil is not blue. But Van Gogh knew exactly what he was doing. He used complementary colors, yellow against blue, to create an almost impossible to ignore visual vibration. It is as if the painting pulses. In another version, the tone shifts. The field is darker, almost nocturnal, with a town in the background, factories, chimneys, signs of industrialization advancing over the rural landscape. In yet another, a crooked, almost deformed tree cuts the sky in half, and the sun looks pale, distant, more like a memory than a presence. There is also the version where the golden field dominates almost the entire canvas, with the sower small, almost lost in the vastness of yellow. And there is the one where, so to speak, the camera moves in closer. We see up close the twisted trunk of the tree and the dark figure of the man in an almost intimate close-up. Notice also the figure of the sower himself. He is never facing us. He is always in motion, in profile or from behind, one arm extended forward, casting invisible seeds over the earth. The brush strokes are short, thick, almost nervous. You can see the texture of the paint piled up on the canvas, as if Van Gogh had no time or no patience to smooth anything out. Everything about him was urgency. And here lies the heart of this story. Van Gogh did not invent this image. He borrowed it, consciously, from a painter he deeply admired, Jean-François Millet, who decades earlier had already painted peasants sowing French fields. But Van Gogh did something different. He turned the sower into a religious symbol. The son of a Protestant pastor, Van Gogh knew well the biblical parable of the sower told in the Gospels of Matthew and Mark. A man who casts seeds over different kinds of soil. Some fall on rocks, others among thorns, others on fertile ground. The parable speaks of faith, of persistence, of sowing even without any guarantee of harvest. Van Gogh, in his letters to his brother Theo, made clear that he saw himself and saw art in this way. He painted like someone who sows tirelessly, repeatedly, without knowing whether it would ever germinate into something recognized in his lifetime. And it did not germinate. He sold very few paintings while he was alive. But he kept going. Because for him, painting was not just a craft, it was purpose. It was the way he found to give meaning to his own existence, even knowing, perhaps sensing, that this earthly life was not all there was. That there was something greater than the visible harvest, something he could only entrust to the soil and to time. The enormous sun behind the sower, in some versions almost a halo, reinforces this reading. It is not just a sunset over a French field. It is almost a sacred aura around a simple human gesture. And perhaps that is where the true power of sowing that Van Gogh was trying to capture truly lies. The certainty that planting in itself is already an act of faith. But is this the only possible reading? Some scholars prefer to see Van Gogh's sower in a more earthly, more social light, an artist's tribute to field workers at a time when industrialization. Remember those chimneys in the background of that darker version, was beginning to swallow up the rural world he loved so much. Under this lens, the sower is not a biblical symbol, but a symbol of resistance, of the dignity of manual labor in the face of a world changing too fast. Others prefer to read the work in a more personal, almost autobiographical way. The sower as a disguised self-portrait of Van Gogh. A man alto in constant motion, casting something of himself onto the world without knowing whether he would ever reap recognition, love, or simply peace. Neither of these readings cancels out the other. Perhaps that is exactly why Van Gogh returned to this scene so many times, in so many versions, through so many winters and summers. Because the image was large enough to carry religious, social, and personal meanings all at once. A good symbol never fits into a single explanation. Van Gogh was, above all, a tireless seeker. In little more than a decade devoted to painting, he produced a body of work that few artists achieve in an entire lifetime, as if he knew deep down that time was short and that every canvas was a seed cast toward a future he might never witness. And that is exactly what makes the sower still so relevant today. The idea that there is value in continuing to plant, even without any certainty of harvest. That a purpose can be greater than immediate recognition. That perhaps life is not reduced only to what we get to see bloom with our own eyes. And you? Do you believe it is still worth sowing something today? An idea, a project, a dream, even with no guarantee at all of seeing the result? Tell me in the comments. I really want to read your story. And if this reflection on Van Gogh and the power of sowing has touched you in any way, leave a like, because that helps this video reach more people who also need to hear this message today. And go ahead and subscribe to the channel, because every week I bring a new work, a new story, a new seed for us to plant together. Until the next video.